So when you're practicing the Buddhist teaching, you need, first of all, faith, and then energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Only faith is not enough. You need to have faith. Develop confidence and enthusiasm towards the practice. That the faith is to control, is to subdue your doubt, your suspicion. So faith is necessary, but other than faith, you have to have the energy. In other words, you have to apply your efforts. Applying more efforts and developing more energy, that is to control sloth and torpor. And the third is mindfulness. As one's energy improves, their awareness and mindfulness will naturally become stronger, controlling agitation and heedlessness. Mindfulness that means you have to have the samadhi, the concentration. You have to be mindful. The 5 virtues are necessary in the practice of the Buddhist teaching: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, insight. When one's mindfulness of the present moment improves, the mind will naturally stay on the object of meditation for longer periods of time, controlling distraction. Fifth is wisdom. As the mind becomes more calm and still, wisdom is developed so that they are able to see the true nature of things, to attain enlightenment. That is to control ignorance. So you need the 5 virtues. Actually, there are 37. Let me introduce this 5, 5, and 7 to you first, and then we'll do a general conclusion of what are the 37 aids to enlightenment. The 5 virtues. The 5 powers is also faith, energy, mindfulness, and tranquility and wisdom, but you have to increase it. So the Buddhist teaching is you have to increase your efforts all the time. So you have to be very diligent. You have to work hard at it. Buddhism is not, if we use the word religion, it's not a religion of just faith. It's a religion of practice, a religion of efforts. Applying your efforts to the practice. You need, other than the theory, you need the practice. So it's not just faith. Faith is not an idolization of certain personification. Faith is applied to let yourself to believe in what you're practicing. Not just idolization, not just idolizing a Buddha. No, that's not what it is. Faith is the faith in yourself. Faith is the faith in your confidence, in your enthusiasm. Not faith in worshiping a Buddha. That's not the faith we're talking about. Faith in yourself, in the confidence, in your enthusiasm. Not in a person, not in God, certainly. And then the 7 enlightenment factors: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So mindfulness, when the 4 arousing of mindfulness are developed, the practitioner must continue to cultivate it further. Investigation. On whatever occasion, abiding thus mindful, the practitioner investigates and examines the state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it. One chooses the most appropriate way according to one's arising conditions. The investigation of state's enlightenment factor is aroused in him and he develops it. That means in the study of Buddhism, in the practice, you have to investigate, you have to ask why. Don't just follow it blindly. You have to analyze. Energy is to apply your efforts. Tireless energy is aroused and developed. Joy, in one who has aroused energy, unworldly joy arises and develops. This kind of joy is not the same as the worldly happiness or the worldly pleasures we're talking about. Sometimes in your meditation, you have all of a sudden an eruption of joy in you. That kind of joyful is not the sensuous pleasures that you have. It's a special kind of divine or spiritual joy. 5th, tranquility. In one who is joyful, the body and mind becomes tranquil. Our mind is always being led away by outer environments, by objects all the time. That's why we have mental afflictions. 6 is concentration. In one whose body is tranquil and who feels pleasure, the mind becomes still and composed. 7, equanimity, he closely looks on with equanimity at the mind and thus still and control. Thus equanimity is aroused and developed. So these are the 7 enlightenment factors which are very important in the practice of Buddhism. So you know that it's not just believing in a Buddha and you can go to heaven. It's not it. You have to practice. You have to make sure that you come to a certain practice that at the time of death, your mind would not be topsy-turvy, we call it. In the Chinese language, it's 颠倒, topsy-turvy. That means the top becomes the bottom and the bottom becomes the top. Your mind is in confusion. Usually when people is on the verge of dying, his mind becomes confused. But if your mind is confused, you have a topsy-turvy mind, you cannot go to the land of bliss. You will roll into samsara and reincarnation. So you have to practice all the time in your concentration in order to chant the Buddha's name. Your mind is not confused and you will be received into the land of bliss. Next, the Eightfold Path, which is just mentioned in the Sutra: right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right efforts, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right view, the view based on the understanding of the Four Noble Truths: causation, impermanence, karma, and non-individuality of existence, and so on, so that all this view removes our ignorance. You gotta have the right view. Right thought, renunciation of craving, hatred, and ignorance, renunciation of attachment to the 5 skandhas, maintaining thoughts of compassion, and so on, just to summarize it. And then right view and right thought pertains to prajna, which is wisdom. View and thought comes from wisdom. So the 3 pillars of the Buddhist practice is wisdom, morality, and meditation. You have to have wisdom, the pillar of wisdom, the pillar of morality, and the pillar of meditation to support your practice. So right view and right thought pertain to wisdom, which is in Sanskrit is called prajna. And then right speech, avoidance of lying, cursing, tattletelling, and flatteries, and double-tonguing, right speech. This is people, most of us in our daily life, we don't pay attention to the right speech. So we curse, we lie, we tattletale, we double-tongue, and that creates a lot of bad karma and bad energy. So you gotta have the right speech. Right action, restrain from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, which is the misuses of the senses. Right livelihood, avoidance of occupations that are harmful to sentient beings, such as, for example, slaughterer, hunter, dealers in weaponry and narcotics and alcohol. Make sure your occupations are not involved with hurting people, hurting other sentient beings. If you're involved in hunting, you're always hunting and killing animals, or involved in slaughtering, or the kind of occupations that is involved in narcotics and alcohol, in intoxication and bringing harmful effects to the society, that you should watch out. You've got to have the right livelihood. So number 3, 4, and 5, right speech, right action, right livelihood pertains to morality. So in Buddhism, you have to maintain a very high level of morality. 6, right efforts, application of diligence, perseverance, and consistency to all the other 7 Eightfold Paths. And then right mindfulness, ongoing mindfulness of the body, feeling mind and objects of thoughts. Right concentration, developing samadhi and vipassana towards the 4 dhyanas. So right efforts, right mindfulness, and right concentration pertains to meditation, which is dhyana, meditation. So prajna, sila, and dhyana. In the common English is wisdom, morality, and meditation. These are the three important supports for all the Buddhist teaching. So you didn't find anything that says you believe in the Buddha and you'll be safe. You'll be forgiven. Your sin will be forgiven by Buddha. Whatever you have done, there's karma associated with it, there's energy. You have to untie the knot yourself. The person who tied the knot to the ship, to the goat, would tie the bell usually to the goat's neck to make sure that the goat doesn't run away, not running too far away. So the person who tie the bell with a dead knot to the lamb's neck, the person who tied it, the person who untied it should be that person, not anybody else. So you have to apply all your efforts yourself towards the path of enlightenment. Nobody can walk the path for you. In Buddhism, it's practice. It's about practice and not about blind worshipping. Now, we've been talking about the 37 aids to enlightenment. The whole Theravada school put a lot of emphasis on the 37 aids to enlightenment. The 4 meditations, we already talked about that, the 4 meditation. The 4 right endeavors, the 4 requisites for obtaining supernatural powers. Actually, you don't have to acquire supernatural powers. In the process of practicing meditation, supernatural power is a byproduct of meditation. But your intention should not be, I want natural powers. I want supernatural power. That's why I want to practice meditation. That's not it, because you don't attach to supernatural powers. You don't crave for something. There's nothing to be obtained. If you still have a craving for obtaining something, you are not at it. You have a desire to fulfill, then you're not practicing it right. The 5 spiritual faculties, which is the 5 virtues that we talk about, the 5 spiritual powers, which already talk about that, and the 7 limbs of enlightenment, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So if you add all this together, it becomes the 37 aids, methods to enlightenment. Every one of these, you need a lot of explanation to it. This is the whole picture of the Buddhist study, the Buddhist practice. If you concentrate on every one of these, you're on your way to enlightenment. That this is just a broad, general concept about the forest. You have to get to study every tree, so that it's not just enough to look at the forest. You have to walk the forest, study every tree, every leaf, every root, so that you become enlightened. This is just a general map, a general concept for you. The 4 meditations, which I haven't talked about, is body as impure, feelings as suffering, mental thoughts as changing instantaneously, and phenomena as selfless. So that's just a few lines to describe the 4 meditations. The 4 right endeavors: to get rid of existing evil deeds, to prevent evil deeds from arising, to start wholesome deeds, to develop existing wholesome deeds. In other words, to get rid of the bad evil deeds, not just to getting rid of it, to prevent it from arising. To do wholesome deeds, not just to do it, to develop it further. That's just the keywords. Every one of these lines needs some explanation so that you know exactly what it means. These are the 4 right endeavors. The 4 requisites for achieving dhyana: concentration of desire towards achieving dhyana. Now this desire is different from a sensuous desire. Concentration of desire, this desire is a destination on an object, an objective. You need an objective. This is what I want. This is not craving. This is not a sensuous desire. This is a desire to do for the destination that you want to go to. Setting up a target. Concentration of energy towards achieving dhyana, concentration of investigation towards achieving dhyana, concentration of analysis towards achieving dhyana. So these are the 4 requisites for achieving dhyana. Okay, so we have explained it. So the 37 eights in the sutra, it does not mention the 4 arousings, the 4 requisites for improving meditation. Only about the 5 virtues, the 5 powers, and the 7 enlightenment factors. Okay, so next time we'll continue. In talking on a sutra like this, we can only, because of the limit of time, we can only give you a broad general concept. You can investigate more by getting into Google about this sutra to get more details about it. This is the sutra that talks about if you're not successful in your meditation, to be enlightened at your present life, it's absolutely important that after you pass away from this world, don't go into samsara. Go into that land of bliss where Amitabha Buddha is the professor in there. He'll be teaching you on your way to enlightenment. So that is an expedient method of getting enlightenment.